Okay. Okay, we are back live and welcome back after the break. Apologies that it took us few extra minutes due to some technical issues, and it's normal these days. Once in a while we have the challenges. This is a way for God to remind us that we are humans and everything is not done by computers. So we will have a very interesting panel discussion now on internal cooperation to ensure successful product launch. And for this, I have great pleasure in introducing the three panel members. Ritu Patel, Global Product Launch Manager of Sandoz. We just heard her very interesting presentation. Bahadir Chakmak, who is Global Portfolio Pipeline Manager at Sandoz. I will just give more a detailed introduction, a short introduction about him. And Stephanie Amanmal, Global Project Manager, Sandoz, and we heard her very interesting presentation yesterday. So first, let me introduce Bahadir Chakmak. We call him Baha. Bahadir is working for Sandoz International, like I mentioned, is a global portfolio pipeline manager responsible for solid oncology and gastroenterology therapy areas. He's based in Holzkirchen, München. He's responsible for idea creation, selection, allocation, and then for all milestone activities until execution of new product opportunities. And then we have Stephanie, who has more than 20 years experience in leading development programs of generic products, focusing on small molecules for many pharmaceutical dosage forms and for all big global markets. Stephanie is currently global lead of several small molecule development programs at Sandoz. And like I introduced Ritu Patel earlier to you, she is global launch manager with Sandoz in Munich. She has over a decade of experience in pharmaceutical industry. So we have three panel experts, portfolio pipeline manager in Bahadir, global project manager in Stephanie, and then global product launch manager in Ritu. So we see end to end, and that's why this panel discussion is going to be very interesting. So how do you suggest, should I bring up some questions and we discuss that, or you would like to first start maybe some opening comments from you and then we jump into some questions?
I'd recommend, Baha, you start as we go along the chain as it's naturally done.
Yeah. Sure. Actually, please, everyone can call me Baha. It's the easiest version of my name. I'm Turkish, so we have different letters and alphabets, so nobody can pronounce my name right. So Baha is the best option. So I'm 41 years old, Turkish originally, living in Germany almost 9 years. I just come today. I'm right now more in my career, more in Germany than Turkey this year. So it's 8 years in Turkey, as I started like a sales rep, and then product manager, and then marketing, and then in Germany, the global product manager, and then global marketing manager, and then in the Sandoz, the oncology franchise, and right now global portfolio and pipeline manager. So in each area I work actually, and always in oncology. So my expert area is oncology, mostly solid tumors, and also of course the other therapeutic areas as well. And right now I'm working in Sandoz, but I need to also say that Samir Agarwal is also a very important person for my career as well, because I first in Germany started to work reporting to him, and not directly, but so nice learnings from him as well. Thanks for that. And right now I'm
glad to say that, but that was all because of your own expertise. Okay, let's continue.
And for Sandoz, actually, we have a very international team. Right now, you can see that I'm Turkish, Ritu is Indian, Stephanie is German, and we have lots of in the other worldwide people working in Sandoz, and everyone has a specific area responsibilities. And so today we will discuss about actually the end-to-end, like Samir explained, from the global portfolio, what global portfolio is doing, and then what is the transition to global project management, and afterwards, what is the transition to the global launch management, how we execute and finalize all the process, what is the actually milestones for us, and that kind of things we will discuss. And I will be responsible for the pipeline part. So maybe Stephanie, you can continue for your part.
Yeah, I mean, I had already yesterday shared some of my experience as global project manager at Sandoz. I'm in generic industry since more than 20 years, and I'm always managing projects, meaning development for generics for global markets. And my motto is with generics around the world, because I think I have now done really everything around the globe. So that's why it's super interesting. And yeah, my contribution in this chain of process, as we are describing it here in the panel today, is make the development happen. Yeah, so it comes from the idea stage, from Baha's area, so where you phrase the product and what we need for which markets, and then my task here is to lead the project teams that they develop the product really, that Ritu at the end can launch really something in our market. Ritu, you're...
Thanks, Steffi. So that was a good connect. So I think you just heard me a couple of minutes ago, so I'm sure you don't want to hear anything about me again. So let me concentrate more on how we function within Sandoz. Maybe just to add to what Steffi just mentioned, myself and Steffi's position, the project management part, as I said, we are connected, or we are located within integrated project management within Sandoz, and that integrated project management is a part of product development. So we kind of, as a global launch manager, I have both within Sandoz and also in my previous experiences, I have had the chance to launch a lot of diabetes products, oncology products, and cardio products. So here within Sandoz, I'm basically associated with the oncology products. So then let's start the discussion. So probably we could spend more time in kind of discussing and having a good conversation. Looking forward.
Yeah, great. Thank you, all three of you. So let's start with the first important question, because first topic is coming from the portfolio perspective. So so Baha, maybe you can comment on that. What is the role of portfolio manager, and how is the portfolio manager involved in cooperation with global project management and product launch management team? The idea is to hear your perspective, because I'm pretty sure everyone in this summit is well aware that what is the role of portfolio manager, but with respect to how to manage the cooperation and how to get the best out of it.
Sure. Actually, the responsibility of the global portfolio manager is starting with the idea phase. And I can easily say everything started with a big bang. So nothing was there. You just look for your therapeutic area. And people actually, last year I was in an external congress as well, some year. And in that one, the originators were more in this congress. And whenever I was explaining what I'm doing for digging that ideas, they surprised actually, because we are even checking the phase 2 and phase 3 studies of the originators. So we are looking which products will be more successful in the clinical trials. What will be their values, for example? What they will bring in the medical area? For example, is the lung cancer product, small cell, non-small cell, and EGFR mutation? Is it a game changer product, or is it just okay-ish product? So we also, calibrate that kind of things from the first idea phase. So it's not like one-to-one copy, whatever it comes. So we need to filter the things with some criteria. So that kind of things, every portfolio manager has a therapeutic area responsibility in my team. So I'm responsible for solid oncology tumors, for example, and gastroenterology. So these areas, I need to follow up the originators. What are the molecules are coming? What kind of opportunities that we can face? Like Ritu said, she trusts me, and at the same time, I should also take this responsibility on my shoulder if I select the right one, actually. So this is the first thing, we are checking the studies, but there are lots of external databases actually next week in the virtual again, but in the London Congress, I will also present the external databases, how we use them, because we can check lots of information from them. For example, evaluate pharma, getting the values, Biomed tracker, the ongoing studies of the molecule, or DRG, Pharma Circle, IPD for the patent information. So every data we can get it from those actually external databases after we filter the alternative molecules, which one we should work on. And of course, we also participate in the medical congresses as well. If you see me in ASCO or ESMO, you don't be surprised as the originator, because we also care about your products more than you guys, actually, I can easily say, because we are checking how it goes, how the other medical oncologists think about the molecule, what is the trend right now in the world. So that kind of information we try to filter. And afterwards, of course, the tracking point is the FDA approval or likelihood approval, because I'm a global portfolio manager, so I'm responsible for each scope. And then we actually started to evaluate everything by the help of the project development team. Of course, we contribute everything, the sales forecast assumptions, if we can make it, and finally make the NPV analysis. And if it's allocated, then our job in the first stage is finished. Like Ritu said, it's not like giving the flower to Stephanie and say, thanks for the rest of the job, because we are also, of course, following each milestones. We also try to support, but the biggest responsibility then comes to Steffi's hands, actually, from the project management, with the support of us. It also continues like that until the product launch. For example, after submission or after some time, Ritu also takes the lead, or anyone in the launch management team. And this was actually like 3 people's support, 3 people's responsibility, but always one person gets the lead of the discussions. So this is at least for Sandoz International, this is our portfolio management understanding.
Fantastic. So basically, you are continuously looking for new ideas, and you very nicely describe the various ways you are doing, and then you pass on the baton to the project management team, and the project management team comes in the lead, but you remain totally involved, because it's just, if I may say in the American terminology, you were the quarterback earlier, but now the quarterback is the project management team is Steffi. So right. Over to you, Steffi, and then your perspective for the project manager then.
Yeah, so exactly. In the first phase, so also when Baha and the portfolio team are selecting the ideas, we are always there to help them. So that's our first piece. We are not in the leading role, of course, but if there's anything like, can you tell me how difficult will this product be? So do you think this is feasible? Do you think we can manufacture this later on? All these questions we would already answer and help them to understand the business case better. So this is our supporting role in this first phase. But once we have then this business case, this first business case set up, and the decision in the company was made, yes, pursue this opportunity, then we come into the lead. And in project management, we have 2 areas. There's the one area where we develop the products by ourselves. And there, of course, my key responsibility is lead the development teams and walk the team through all the stages. And just this morning, we had a case study where the colleague just nicely showed all the stages and all the challenges. Yeah. So for this phase, I need support from people like Baha, because what I need is, for example, so which market? Yeah, for which markets do I need to develop the product? I mean, obviously that's important, yeah. But also the volumes of the product, for example. So how big will my batches be? Yeah, such very practical questions are important for us. Otherwise, we can't select the right batch sizes. We can't select the right manufacturing sites and tools. So there are very important pieces, or let's say also a very crucial information is, okay, how expensive can our product be? So for me, from development side, it's always the pressure to produce at the end a product which is as cheap as possible, yeah, that we can meet the market needs. So the expected total production cost, so what can we still sell, is a super important input I get from portfolio colleagues, or special market needs, as I was elaborating a little bit yesterday. So all these information pieces coming from portfolio, and we give back also information on how will our project really run. And then once we have set up the real strategy for the project, the execution strategy, of course, we align with our portfolio colleagues whether this makes sense and meets the market needs. So this is the internal part, but of course we have also a project management group who is driving the external project. So we also have licensed projects, which is also an inherent part of our pipeline. We do not do everything by ourselves. I think no company is doing this. And there we also have a group who is then working with the external partners to make the projects happen in the time frame and under the conditions as we need it. So this is mainly the project manager's part. So make it happen, to make it short. And this is mainly until we submit the dossier to the authorities. And then Ritu, the launch management, comes into the lead. I mean, we have launch managers already before connected to the project, that they have an information around so what's going on. But I think then, Ritu, I hand over to you in the launch phase, right? Once we have submitted, our major tasks are done. I mean, they still come in something like deficiency letters. We have to answer them. Even we have to create new data if requested from the authorities. But then our key task is done.
Yeah, thanks for that. Very well explained. And so basically, most of the work after idea creation is done at the launch project manager's desk, and especially to keep all the loose ends tight and raising red flags wherever required, pushing people to speed up things if things are falling between the cracks, and also keeping an eye always. So sometimes I wonder, a project manager is having eyes all around because he or she has to look all around in all the topics. So the baton has now gone to the launch manager. So we heard your interesting presentation, Ritu, earlier, but the same question I ask you: what is the role of product launch manager, and how is it connected to the other functions?
Mm-hmm. So maybe again a very generic question, Samir. As you said, I think everybody knows what a product launch manager does, but if I have to talk about how it works within Sandoz. So as I said, we are a team of around 9 global launch managers in our team, and we specifically handle the top projects in the company. So there are certain thresholds that we kind of take up as the projects, because this is something that we need to constantly have and watch. So again, as also Steffi mentioned, we also handle both in-house projects and business development projects. So we, sometimes we have kind of early stage projects, sometimes late stage projects where we do not have kind of that much time. So you really need to act quickly. So there's also a huge support system that we have, which is regional launch managers that contribute to the global, launch execution. And at the same time, we also have the local launch managers that also are a part of this the whole launch community. But apart from that, we also actively work, just as Steffi mentioned, with various different functions, the leads from different elements, such as IP, from regulatory, from supply chain, and so on. So what we do, as I said also in my presentation, we try as much as possible to get into the whole cycle early. That means, already in after the selection, in case it's an in-licensing project, probably in the due diligence phase, or in the deal selection and so on, so that kind of we have something to contribute. Because I always feel that the launch execution people have a huge asset, which is the lessons learned. So that I think we have a good setup within Sandoz, so that we are given a chance to contribute in a much earlier stage, and not in the launch execution phase for the product. And so some of the main tasks that we have, as everybody knows, what we do as a global launch manager, but what we mainly focus on is the smooth execution, the launch readiness, from all the aspects, right from commercial, from IP aspects, from regulatory aspects, from supply chain aspect. And the second main element for us as a function is the risk mitigation. So as I said earlier, there are calculated risks. So there are risks that happen also during the launch execution phase. So where you still need to keep your mind open. So I'm happy and proud that we have kind of an excellent team who are kind of like acting as firefighters, and we make sure to flag the delays at the right time with the right ideas and right backup plans, be it the commercial part or the operational part. So that is some of our key tasks. And something that I would like to share, which I find fantastic within Sandoz, is the CEO culture. That means, as Steffi said, earlier, we're all the leads at different stages of the product launch cycle. And we are cultivating a culture of being the CEO of your product, of your launch. So only when you get into the shoes of the CEO, you can feel the pain of the delay or the chances of delay, and you can feel the right pleasure of being successful in the market. So I do highly appreciate this culture we have within Sandoz.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I think very, very, very insightful. And I really like this idea of CEO culture. So the next topic is actually related to what you just said. And this is also a question from Ashwini Kumar Srivastav, who has joined from Chicago today, I think. So what are the major risks which usually delay a launch, and how do we mitigate them? Now, this is also a broad topic. I know it could be any kind of risk, but in your experience, what are the major risks, and what is your advice to the participants of this summit? What could be done to mitigate those?
Shall we start? Maybe, Ritu, you want to start?
Yeah, I don't mind. Probably I can lay a foundation,
Ritu.
And then you both can add something to it. So as Samir well explained, so I think we can discuss the whole day about this topic, or even more. So again, it's always important to see, are these risks external or are these risks internal again, right? And that's the first basis. And the second basis for me is, again, make or buy. So there are different strategies. If you have a make option, if you have a buy option, and also one in the middle, which we shouldn't forget, which is a co-development. So I think all three different scenarios possess different risk items. So if I could name a few, probably, like especially for in-house, what we had is, I think also I have to connect back to my presentation, what I said, considering, let's talk about the internal factors. So internal factors, could be that the launch strategy that you have in place, which is not probably well integrated throughout the product launch cycle, and B, so miscalculation of the timelines. And in case we are talking about business development, so let's say we strike a deal, and as I said, it's so vast, this topic. Just to name a few, let's assume we have kind of signed a deal, and I think the risk starts right with the timelines of when you do it, when you strike a deal, and B, probably if the dossier you're getting from the partner is ready, so that you are again on time. And sometimes, again, associated to the dossier part is your due diligence function within your company. So how well did they kind of identify the risks? Because you might probably end up with some calculated risk that you could have probably potentially identified earlier. I'm talking about the post-launch variations that frequently occur. I guess. I think all of us have been through that phase. So which is, again, one of them. And then after that, also some of the risks that we have faced, in terms of external, the market changes. So, you probably made assumptions of, I don't know, 2 or 3 competitors, and suddenly you have, I don't know, like you kind of possess like 4 or 5 competitors, which you're not ready of. And then you have IP factors, for some reason, depending on how aggressive the originator is, you probably have the right IP strategy in place, but nevertheless, you have some surprises, like depending on how big you can own your market share, probably originator has a different strategy to kind of, play around in the IP sector. So, and regulatory, as I said, I also had a lot of, delays and risks that were associated also with regulatory. So I would probably take a pause here and ask Bahadir and Steffi to contribute probably on this.
Yeah, thanks, Ritu. Before you do that, just a quick comment. Michelle Urban, if you are listening to this, then you can go on backstage, and then you will be then added to this panel. So we'll continue. We'll not take a break because to avoid loss of time. So Baha, over to you.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, Baha. If I may just add one element which is quite fresh to all of us, I guess, is the supply chain element, where we had a lot of uncalculated risks. So you're right, guessing right. I'm connecting to the whole COVID pandemic that we had last year. I think all of us suffered our launches last year because there were I think innumerable number of surprises we had because of the whole situation, especially in terms of regulatory and the supply chain. So we had a lot of delays in supply chain aspects from running the audits, which kind of all turned to the remote audits, and then we also had issues, the risks related to the logistics, which was kind of huge for us, especially being a day one. And if you have a kind of widespread supply chain where your product is coming from different corners of the world, that was, I think, one of the risks that none of us, to be honest, kind of calculated. Over to you, Baha.
Actually, I will make one small example about it, make it more bright and clear. For example, if there is a very beautiful lady sitting in the bar, I'm more than sure people, the single at least, people would like to show their demand and try to talk with her. So the important question is what kind of risk you take when you start the project. If there is a risky project, very attractive, but very hard to develop product, for example, then you have a risk that you can also not launch the product at the same time because there are some things that you need to consider. For example, API could be one of the reasons, or maybe the cost that you expected was not good enough, or maybe you failed in the clinical trials about this product. So it depends. This question, maybe I can explain. If you talk about an easy one-to-one development, then and the end stage, the things that Ritu said is absolutely right. But if it's a hard to make product, then I think Steffi has lots of examples in her experience what kind of hurdles we have actually. Sometimes there's an explosion somewhere in API units that you cannot provide the API. Sometimes it happens that the market dissolves because of there's another molecule coming from a different market. So lots of things. Maybe Steffi, for the development part, you have some examples.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Baha and Ritu. I think you already summarized a lot of these things, and often the devil is in the detail. Yeah, so the risks are, you have the major risks you always have. Yeah, you develop your product and you find it's not stable. You develop a product and you find you can't become bioequivalent. It takes longer to develop the product to become bioequivalent. You have the patent situation. We have sometimes projects where I have 200 to 300 patents for a product. Yeah, find a way to design around all of these patents. Yeah, some may be already old and not interesting anymore, but still, also just one can make you a lot of trouble, right? So the devil is really in the details for the development people, and whether it's an external company which is developing or we in-house are developing. The challenges are the same, right? And another big piece is still always the supply chain itself, and I think that's also really to what you said, yeah. So also there, often the little things making the trouble, yeah. So you try a scale up and it doesn't work as you expected. You have a different behavior of your product in the scaled up version compared to your lab samples. So all these things can happen, and of course, a good project manager challenges these topics already up front and tries to safeguard it, tries to add here a safety link, there a safety link, a pilot study, whatever, yeah. But on the other side, you have also the constraints of time and money. So you cannot add endless risk mitigation. So there's also a certain risk you have to take as a company. And this is something usually we also are doing together, yeah. It's not the individual decision of one group, it's the decision together to say, okay, how much risk do we want to accept in that product? And this goes back, Baha, to your topic of the nice lady, yeah. So maybe you want to take the risk and talk to her.
Yeah.
How expensive will the drink be you offer her, right? So that's then the question here. And still, the pandemic is another piece which brought us really into, let's say, challenging situations. I have the feeling we mastered some of them really well, but it shows then when you have such new situations, how flexible a team or a company is there. So how easy can you switch to remote audits? How can you find different ways of transportation, for example? So very simple things like, we had challenges sometimes to transport standards for analytical procedures, yeah, because the companies didn't produce because the country was in a lockdown. So there are many such little things which can also pop up and where you didn't expect that these hurdles will come up. So the typical black swans, right? But then you have to take some fantasy and see how you can circumvent this.
Yeah, I think go ahead, Ritu. You were saying
I think in future, all the companies would have an extra space in their risk mitigation Excel sheet, which is pandemic. So it could be COVID, it could be something else, but I think we were kind of well prepared.
Yeah. No, I think, first of all, I would like to welcome Michel Urban, who is also now joining the panel. So we heard his speech earlier today, so I'll not introduce him again. But just to summarize what we discussed so far, and then I'll link to the next question, is that there is no way to plan for every possible risk. But yes, as far as possible, we do plan. And the approach to what I am getting out from all three of you, that we keep a regular look at things and adapt based on the situation. There are some major risks and there are some minor risks for sure, I guess. And some of the major risks, like you were saying, Steffi, earlier also, there are 100 patents, but it is also possible that the patent situation changes during the course of the development because the innovator extended the patent or found some way of blocking it for longer, etc. So there are multiple things possible. And so one of the other risks here, or the issue which comes up, is which also is related to commercialization, and perhaps you can comment on it, Michelle, and then feel free others as well, including Baha, is that how do we identify and mitigate and avoid the risk of pricing reference and topics related to that? So I guess when this question was put here, I guess it is basically related to more emerging markets, I am guessing, because one country references the pricing from other country, and then if we are selling in a lower price at in one country than the other country, a higher price in other country, so it creates issues for us to launch at a higher price in another geography, right?
Maybe first of all, I will just say hello to everyone. Nice to see all of you, Stephanie, Ritu, Bahadir. Frankly speaking, I wish this conversation would never stop because I find so many analogies in our case, and even the integration of the launch management was a big topic in our company, especially when we transitioned from a generic company, Zentiva, to Sanofi. You can see that there are very different approaches how you manage launches. So I will get to the point of pricing as well.
But feel free to add more to the previous discussion, because it will be lovely to hear your perspective.
If I may, we have a very limited time, but just to present you how this is actually being managed in Sanofi. So for me, even the question on the cooperation between a project manager and launch manager is a little bit of a schizophrenic situation because it's me in one person actually. Yeah? And the way it was managed, in generic company, I had the experience to launch a product on Patex in Europe. It was very different. And I heard from Ritu that you are a team of 9 or 10 people. I can well imagine. I admire actually what you do because it's a very, very challenging job. Really, you need to do micromanagement. I remember back in the days that I used to have a phone number of a driver who was delivering the finished goods in a truck and accessing the borders on Hungary to make sure that he's there at the midnight so that we launch at Patex. And it's very different if you're launching innovative products, because there, frankly speaking, if it's 1 day difference, week, months are worse. 1 year is a disaster, of course, but no one really cares, if I can say it. Yeah, but here it's totally different. And what happened in our case, that it was also based on the resources that we had, is that the global project manager, so basically Stephanie roles, merged with the launch preparation or launch management role of Ritu. So we are responsible from the very beginning when the global project is kicked off, after it is passed over from global portfolio colleague, of course, until the very first launch in the country. If there are some Patex launches, especially in Europe, and you're managing multiple countries, then the first wave of launches, and then we make a transition to global supply team with, let's say, managing the routine production and also in the small countries where the complexity is not that high. So this is a different setup, but I can fully imagine that in Sandoz for generic launches it cannot work this way, and it's much intense work. So this is just for the comment at the very beginning. The cooperation between portfolio and global project manager is extremely important. We are best friends, best buddies, I would say. We have one-on-one sessions on every week. Even after the project is officially approved, we are really in touch. Like Ritu said, the person cannot just exit after the transition. It's really crucial to be there to support the other partner. So this is what we do. What I can just mention, what is from portfolio from us very important is definitely the TPP, the target product profile. Stephanie already touched upon that. What happened in our case 2 years ago is that we are developing a fixed dose combination, innovative one, and we didn't even have all APIs confirmed in the formulation, and yet we were asked to start the project. So you can imagine, in generic world, this is a nonsense, it doesn't work. However, here in this case, we decided, for the sake of saving the time, that we will run 2 prototypes at the same time in the development. And after 7 months from the start of the project, we decided only for one path. But we did it because at the time, pharmacovigilance was raising some alert on cancer-associated risk with this molecule. So we knew which type of drug we want. We had 2 options. So then we selected only one prototype. This kind of a freestyle, I think, was a very great experience. Of course, you cannot do it forever, but for the limited time in the feasibility phase, we said that it's worth it to invest to 2 prototypes. So TPP is very important. If you know from the very beginning, it is good. If you change it after half a year and you don't know about it, then it's of course a big flaw and it shouldn't happen. And country scope, I will not repeat myself. And also what Stephanie said, country scope is extremely important. We knew, for instance, in one high priority project where we had almost 8 clinical studies, that we want to have a China in. The problem was, and this is why I was referring also to the question I raised yesterday on the bottom-up and let's say top-down forecast. It's not only about the forecast, but also on having the full engagement of local team. I don't know if you face the same in Sandoz. who are contributing even during the feasibility phase of the project. Yeah, because we had China confirmed from portfolio, but he didn't reach out to the country yet at the time, and yet local RA and medical were supposed to, let's say, come up with an estimate of local phase 3 study. I will not go into details, which impacted the global project budget. And they said, our commercial team does not know the product, so we will not contribute. So it was a back and forth discussion. I will not go into that, but I'm sure that you know these stories as well. Just to conclude, because we have limited time, pricing reference, this is more of a commercial topic, I would say. So I'm not an expert here. What I feel is important is that the market access and pricing lead is definitely part of the global project team. I'm sure in Sandoz you have the same, and especially like 2 years prior to launch, the pricing lead helps you to somehow define the launch sequence, because it's not only dependent on the registration, on the industrialization, on the IP limits, but at the end, if some Eastern European country with a low price impact the business case for France or Germany in Western Europe, which is, let's say, more important market usually, then you decide maybe to launch these Eastern countries even later on at the end, or you don't launch them at all. For emerging countries, we had a situation that we had to jeopardize the launch or to kill the launch in France because of the link to Algeria. Yeah, in Algeria, we had a very successful product, and surprisingly, it was launched earlier than in Europe, because Europe realized after 10 years that they want the product as well. But because of this link of the price, we just said that we will not go with the launch in France. So I spoke too much. Now I will give you the floor, but I wanted to contribute also at the beginning. Yeah.
No, not at all, Michel. Actually, we are very happy to hear a different voice from Sandoz. I mean, because with Sandoz, we know each other already, Ritu and Steffi, so thanks for your comments. And for me, price is actually the target cost. So what kind of target cost I should assume? And I'm talking about a project maybe will be launched in 2035. And right now the FDA is checking the dossier for the molecule, and I need to think about the scopes. And the scopes is more related to the originator again, which scopes they are starting their clinical trials, in which phase, in which scopes they are, that we should understand and make the pricing assumptions. I need to say here, by the way, it's not my only thing. We have a very amazing finance team and also process managers. They made an amazing forecasting templates. So in this one, in each forecast, each scope, we know the pricing assumptions whenever there's a low, mid, or high competition occurs. So we can guess, of course, none of the sales forecast is the right one, but we can guess at least the target cost, what kind of product we should consider, and what kind of cost we should produce this product for. So that kind of reference price question, Samir, I can reply in a different perspective, actually.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, please.
If I may add to the pricing reference, I mean, from the commercial point of view, because, which is also an external factor that can influence your product on the market before and after, both on both the levels, because this was, I think I worked more as a portfolio manager as compared to a launch manager. So I know the commercial pain that we would have, especially in the field of generics and the price referencing we have. And one of the classical examples I have in my previous company was especially the price reference that we have within European countries. So we had amazing business cases for some of the top markets within EU, European Union. But again, the price referencing kind of had such a huge impact on our internal pricing strategy. So we consider two scenarios. So one was before the launch. So we have, as Baha said, we all have our own pricing strategies, and we have all our own assumptions and cost of goods, the margins that we would like to have. But I think the major impact that we had most of the time in most of the generics we launched in my previous company was after the launch, because we had some premium prices in some of the EU countries that we had, but just because of the price referencing policies, we kind of had to readapt prices in certain countries, as Samir, you mentioned in the beginning of this question. So that was kind of a huge disadvantage of certain countries that were fairly doing well in terms of prices, but then we had to shoot down the prices just based on this price referencing policy. And what was the consequence of that? We kind of had the stop of commercialization because some of the countries stopped commercializing their product because it was no more profitable as they expected earlier. And B, we also went, this was an extreme extent, but we also, after certain years, because, you know, in your, RA database, you would see, you know, when you stop the commercialization and you haven't marketed for a few years, the question is, do I get the product back on the market or not? So then we also went for an extreme extent of deleting the marketing authorization. So price referencing can have an impact on you know, quite on different stages of when your product is. And one more last point that I would like to add for price referencing is, I think some of you who have been involved in this, you know, whole pricing strategy and so on, I think the right, one of the learnings for me was to have the right tool within your company because price referencing is such a critical topic and so intense and vast. What we struggled in my previous company is to have the right price referencing tool where you can easily kind of compare and you can see the dynamics and fluctuations. Where do I have, kind of a space to play around, and what is my margin and so on. I think we kind of, while I was leading the company, we finally found some good tools, which I think would definitely kind of create a right pricing strategy, especially in terms of price referencing.
I think very well said, all of you. If I may add a couple of sentences based on what we discussed yesterday also and today also, when we were talking about what should be our global strategy, how to link all the markets together. We were talking today about, in Michelle's presentation, about preparing a strategy for bioequivalence studies, for example, for global markets and things like that. I think it all boils down. Pricing referencing also is a risk, and pricing reference is a risk. So it is very important, in my opinion, to first figure out which are our major important markets. And then we should peg our pricing according to those major markets. And we should swallow the bitter pill of not launching in some markets where the pricing is likely to be very low, even if it means some loss of business. We have to look at the global perspective and figure out where ultimately the organization will be having more commercial success. Sometimes some companies tend to overlook that. And I know both your companies are not doing that, but sometimes some companies tend to overlook that, especially where the business is fragmented into multiple geographies. So one wise guy, and no offense meant to anyone, one wise guy who is doing business in a small country doesn't realize the importance of what price he or she has quoted in a small country and with a few $1,000 or euros, and had a major impact in a bigger market, which was $1 million or $10 million business. I think this is an important topic also for all of us to consider. And I guess here the role of the commercial and the portfolio management teams is very important. So should we move on to one other risk which often comes up, which some people in the chat also had earlier asked, are pre-launch variations. So there are multiple times, there are multiple variations required, and it's a nightmare for everyone, for project management, for launch management, and also for the manufacturing teams, everyone. So is there any guidance, or how do you guys manage these pre-launch variation related risks, and are there any ways to mitigate these risks? So feel free, whoever wants to take this question first.
Maybe
So,
if I start here now, because I think this is really something which creates a headache from, let's say, already when we start submission, when we start to compile the dossier, then we may already see some gaps where we say, shall we include this now, but we don't have the data, so we could submit later, or do we wait for adding this information later to the dossier? So starting already in this phase, there can pile up some gaps, let's say, that's the one thing. Then there come in things like the originator changes the SMPC, so there comes an indication in, or the text changes. So these small things, which you also have to follow up. Or you have bigger trouble because you need to add another API source. That's really some of the worst things, that you need a new API source, an additional API source, a new manufacturing site. I mean, this is then something which can really kill your launch date. So it's important that we try at least to overcome these things, and that we, if it happens, that we prepare these things as soon as possible. But we know also, and I think Ritu, you are then as launch manager mainly in the lead to drive this, that this is really a major risk, and to pull all the people together and to keep the oversight. So which variations do we have? When will they be approved? Can we have them together approved, or do we need to, let's say, I prefer to do 3 type 1A instead of 1 type 1B, or even a type 2 variation. So this is then something which is also very, of course, need our regulatory experts, that they really give us the best recommendations here. But it is really a challenging thing which needs special attention all the time in the launch preparation phase. I think, Ritu, you can sing a song around this topic, right?
Absolutely. So if I may add to whatever Steffi said, I mean, absolutely right. So I would again look at it as 2 different factors, right? So one is external and the second one is internal. So when I say external, as one of the classical examples, as Steffi mentioned, like you have a sudden entry of a new API source, which you have no other choice but to kind of go through a variation. So there are certain factors where you do not have an influence on. But the second part, I would like to comment more on that, which is basically the internal factors, probably which you can try and make an attempt to avoid those variations. So some of them, let's classical example, which I faced both in my current and previous companies, which is the changes to the target product profile. So let's assume when you're fixing your target product profile, I know what is the product I would like to have on the market. It is for me truly unacceptable if there are major changes to the primary target product profile that you have. So a classical example would be, I have agreed and I have made peace with the 24 months shelf life that I would like to go on the market, and suddenly I would wish to have a 36 months. This is something that one would have thought before, than kind of getting this point at some point of time, which would probably end up in a variation. So, that's the reason. So for me, first point is try not to deviate as much as possible from your target product profile, which would eventually create many variations. 2 is, how good and strong is your due diligence team? So how well did they identify the gaps in the dossier, as I think Steffi mentioned as well? So how can you avoid these variations later? So I think that's, again, another important point. And third one is, again, I think also related to the TPP, which is basically the product name, or I have seen some countries, some markets, all of a sudden, they want to, launch as a branded generic and not anymore as INN generic. So I do wonder, why is this commercial idea coming now? I mean, yes, of course, to a certain extent, it is acceptable if you have the right justification. But, sometimes it's really important that at least the basics, again, I have to connect back to the TPP, that you have the strong TPP and you stop kind of frequent deviations from your basics.
Actually, I can add only one small thing. Michelle, if you give me this chance, only one small thing. For me, the most important thing, this is not for Sandoz or my business life, but for any time in my life, the communication. So the communication is really very important, and how clear you communicate the topics is also very important. For target products, whenever you start to develop a product, or whenever you select the product, whenever you allocate the product, you should define the competitive part of the product as well in the first site. For example, we can talk about room temperature conditions, or in-use stability durations, or shelf life durations, or what kind of product you're looking for. Maybe it was an ampoule, but you want to make an IV form. So that kind of things you should consider in the development phase, if it's an internal product. If it's a BD product, right, Ritu say, and I was thinking maybe we can say to Miro, next time we can also add one BD colleague here from Sandoz, because it's also very important which supplier you select and what kind of conditions you're talking with them. The due diligence, like you say, Ritu, is very important. Everything is, you can fix actually in the beginning with communication. So very clear communication, very clear statements, what you want from the development, what do you want from the BD, what is your target product. Maybe it can be different in 10 years, of course, but the main actually area should be stable.
So perhaps last comment from you, Michel, before we break for lunch.
Yeah, very quickly, I subscribe to all.
Take your time, take your time.
I agree, you know, there are external, internal risks and the reasons for delay. The internal ones are especially, let's say, painful. I agree with Ritu that change of the TPP in the launch preparation phase is unacceptable. This is all preventable. You can do it much earlier on. It's not even acceptable in many cases in the development phase, you know. So this is what I agree with. We were facing an issue which I don't know if it is preventable. We thought it's possibly yes, but depends case by case cases. I think Stephanie mentioned it yesterday as well. Scaling up is an issue, and in Russia, when launching a big generic product, we are facing this issue during the registration. Yeah, that you know you start with the lab scale, and of course everything looks fine. You submit the dossier with 6 months stability data, but then at 18 or 12 months you will see that you're out of spec. So then you change the formulation. You need to submit additional data, and you face a delay not only for the preparation of the variation pack, but also the approval timelines, which in our case was like 9 months, and we were not the first on the market in Russia for this big product. So it was a big disappointment. We were saying that maybe preventable action would be next time for big product you believe in, to try maybe even to produce commercial size batch at the time, you know, before the let's say submission, so that you have enough data, and maybe you will see it much early on. But it's a different level of investment. We said that for big projects, we will definitely consider it. But I agree, especially for generic projects, it is a disaster to face these, preventable, let's say, launches, delay in launches, yeah, with variation. That's
so. Any more comment from the panel on these topics?
I just wanted to add that scale up is a great topic that you got, Michel. So I think this is something we internally suffer as well. So bang on the point. So I'm with you on that.
So this just clearly highlights that we across the industry, we have similar challenges, and the best way to manage these challenges, which all of you highlighted, is advanced planning, regular communication, and perhaps these are the two most important topics. And then, of course, there are other ways also to manage these risks. But I guess if we are working in time pressure for a project, there will always be some things which will go wrong. So that's why the planning, communication, and adaptability are the main topics. Perhaps this is what all of you have highlighted. So with that, unfortunately, I will have to close this session. I think this was such an exciting discussion for last 1 hour that we could have easily gone for another 30-40 minutes at least on the same topic. So, but I want to thank all four of you for your time, first of all, and for your lovely comments. So now we will break for the networking lunch. So I guess Simona from Y Summit will join to mention a few things, but we can now all disconnect. And thank you very much once again. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
So Those who are still listening, we will join back at 1 o'clock after the lunch break.
Hello all.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so we're live finally. Well, finally. You've been online for the whole time, and I guess that you were up for such a treat with the former panel discussion. It was very fruitful, and I loved all the speakers. Can you share your perspective, Samir, on that? Like, it's been very insightful, I believe, but I'm not a professional in the pharmaceutical field. So
it was a very nice discussion. We had a very distinguished panel. They are working day to day on these important topics, so they know all the challenges and all the solutions. So that was very lovely discussion.
Yeah, I enjoyed it very much, and you've got a few events or a few webinars topics to discuss further on. But for now, we've got a networking lunch. So what you can do, I'll repeat myself, but this is always good to remind that we've got sessions prepared for you. You can join the roundtables according to your topic, or you can create your own session based on the interest and see whether anybody else joins. Then you have option to go for speed networking. It means that you'll get connected to a random speaker or attendee for 20 to 180 seconds, meaning that you have up to 3 minutes to chit-chat, see who's on the other side, introduce yourself, maybe open some challenges or opinions, opportunities that you've got on your mind, and you can continue the discussion either through a separate meeting or on our community platform, BPM Workout. BPM Workout is our community platform to grow your impact. You can find the information in the expo area, where I'll be available for demonstration of this channel. It's like social media dedicated specifically to BPM professionals. You can post your articles, videos, pictures, and ask questions to the community of experts who have the answers. So I welcome you to join. It's 2 months free trial, and then within those 2 months, you can also get access to our conferences free of charge. Come there, see for yourself whether you like it or not. We'll be running short daily webinars Monday till Thursday, 4 p.m. European time. And it's a place for deeper discussion on the challenges and opportunities of your field. So thank you, and I'll see you in the networking sessions. Bye.